On Tech News today, women being harassed on Twitter have new help from a nonprofit organization. We'll tell you all about it. Plus, Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg opens up on how uncool he is and what he thought of the movie The Social Network. And we finally know what sunk Google's mystery barge. Stick around. Tech News Today is next.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for Tech News Today is provided by CashFly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is Tech News Today for Friday, November 7th, 2014. This episode is brought to you by Gazelle, the fast and simple way to sell your used gadgets. Find out what your used iPhone, iPad, or other Apple products are worth at Gazelle.com. Tech News Today is the show where we talk about the tech news with the journalists who report it. Welcome to the show. I'm Mike Elgan, and with us at the controls is the one and only Brian Burnett. Hey, Brian. He's kind of cast in darkness and shadows because he's on the witness protection program. We're also masking his voice.
Yeah, we got a lot going on over here. So.
Yeah, but I thank you for that. It's not an easy job, especially when you step into it like every once in a while. Well, it's Friday, so we also have Christina Warren as our co-anchor. Welcome to you, Christina Warren.
Hello, hello.
And, you know, you always have really interesting opinions about everything in technology. And yesterday, Amazon dropped a bomb on us in the shape of the Amazon Echo, which is basically it's a thing that serves up a virtual assistant product called Alexa.
Bluetooth speaker.
Exactly.
It's Siri and a Bluetooth speaker. It's bizarre. It's kind of awesome. Okay, look, I did totally sign up, and I told them, I was like, look, let me buy one for $100. Like I put my name into the, let me buy it early thing. But it's weird. I don't know. I don't get it.
I have two views on it. Wrote a column about it, and I didn't get it either. And then by the time I was done with the column, that's the great thing about being a columnist, isn't it? Is you can figure out what you think.
You can figure out what you think, like while you're writing it. Totally.
Exactly. But my view is that this is really the future. The current usage of virtual assistant Siri, Google Now, Cortana on a smartphone or a tablet or in a browser on a PC is going to soon be a kind of the fallback position, and the future position, I think, will be for these devices to be special purpose for each room. So you have one in the living room, kitchen, the dining room. You have one in the bathroom. You'll have one. Oh, people are talking about what a privacy invasion it is. People bring their smartphones into the bathroom right now. The microphone, the camera, the internet connection, it's already with you in the bathroom. So don't freak out about a one that's designed to be in the bathroom. And I think that's really, I think we're going to get to a world that's going to be just like Star Trek. You start talking, and the thing recognizes your voice, it knows who you are, and then it does virtual assistant stuff. And it's going to be cool. People are going to love it. And I'm shocked, frankly, that Amazon beat Google to it.
No, I am too, and I'm with you. I was speaking at this thing, the Zula Messaging Summit earlier this week, and I was supposed to be talking about like where messaging will be in 2020, and one of the things that I mentioned was kind of this role of voice, of using your voice both for contextual awareness stuff and to speak what we mean and to get feedback back, and so I've been thinking a lot about that as kind of a concept, and then I'm with you. I think to see Amazon do this before Google has is really fascinating, because Google obviously has been going in this direction with Google Now with all their products. And I think that it actually kind of makes sense as a standalone feature in some ways more than it does as something built into your smartphone. Some of the use cases they were showing off, obviously with the Bluetooth speaker playing back music and being able to set alarms for timers in the kitchen, being used as an alarm clock. There's a lot of functionality there that kind of, I kind of combine the argument that in some ways it would be more useful to have this as a standalone secondary device, in addition maybe to having it built to your phone, but having something that's just there in the room, like you were saying, so that we can be in this future Star Trek world and just always, be getting whatever information we want. I think the big thing, and this will be what we'll have to determine, is execution, right? I mean, like, it looks great in the demo video, and you can see how this could be useful in your regular life. But is this actually going to work the way they show it? And is it going to be fast enough and have enough functionality and enough information that makes it worth having yet another device that does this sort of thing in your house?
It seems unlikely that Amazon's Alexa, I think is the name of the actual virtual assistant, is going to be anywhere near as good as Google Now or Apple's Siri anytime in the near future. I mean, Siri came out of a Pentagon project, and
yes.
This is like really intense technology, and Google Now,
yes,
of course, is very intense technology, leveraging the knowledge graph and so on. And so it's probably not going to be quite as good. But just so people are clear on what this thing actually is, it's not advanced technology. What it is it's basically a speaker. And it's a speaker with a microphone built in and an internet connection. There's a big dial on the top for the volume, which makes sense. And there's a light that kind of tells you that it's working, which makes sense. But really, the 95% of the innards of this thing is a high quality speaker, which makes you realize that, of course, Sonos could build this sort of functionality, and they should. They should just start building.
They should.
They already have the internet connection. They just need microphones built into Sonos devices. And so,
right. I mean, yeah, no, I think you're dead on. I mean, actually, that was kind of one of the first things I thought, more than even I think Google doing this. Although I am surprised that Amazon was there first, but this is the sort of thing that really a Sonos or Sony, for that matter, anybody who's doing any of these kind of wireless speaker systems should be doing. That's makes the most sense, I think, especially if you have it connected to the rest of your home media. You can kind of envision that sort of world. I do like the fact that they've said that out of the box it'll work with Spotify and Pandora and some other services, and so that I think from even a music playback argument is fairly solid. But yeah, I mean it's I'm intrigued. I'm definitely intrigued. I'm not going to be saying this will be a runaway hit and that they'll be creating a brand new market, but I think that it's kind of awesome that Amazon is doing this, and especially in light of the Fire Phone disaster, as it were. I do love that they're willing to innovate, and they're doing it in a different way and in a much more consumer-oriented way than Google does. But at the same time, I feel like Google might have better underlying technology, but Amazon gets the customer benefits. So I'm looking forward to seeing who else follows in their footsteps after this thing comes out.
The big picture is that everybody's kind of in shock and awe that they dropped this thing. But the fact is that this use case of just talking to the room and having the room be a virtual assistant is perfectly inevitable. It's absolutely going to happen. Absolutely. It's going to be ubiquitous and universal. And these things are going to be as common as refrigerators and toasters. And in fact, refrigerators and toasters might get the microphones and speakers too.
They should. I mean, think about it. I mean, like, what would be better? I mean, already some appliances, we've been seeing this at CES for years, right? Where you can do that sort of thing, where you can, set the, you can talk to your oven and say, turn on at this time and start at this time, and control your laundry, from a smartphone or from something like that. And that makes complete sense, I think, for appliances, especially, to your washing machine, say, wash clothes, start laundry in 45 minutes, is something that makes a ton of sense. And I think that it's great that they're showing us this future, because I'm with you. I believe it'll be absolutely inevitable.
And who should own this, of course, is Samsung. Samsung needs to back off a little bit on the smartphone market and really go whole hog into this market where you have a virtual assistant controlled Internet of Things in your home automation, whatever you want to call it. But basically, you want to talk to the room and say something like Alexa or OK Google or Hey Siri or whatever it is, and just say, is anybody using the dryer right now? Because I got something I want to use the dryer for. No, the dryer is available. Okay. And then throw it in there and tell me when this is done, and then have it come back. That sort of thing. That's going to happen. Samsung is in a uniquely good position to have a million different devices for this sort of thing, and to sort of drive the standards for this. And I hope they step up and realize that that's really what their mission in life should be right now. So anyway, so let's get into the regular news. A nonprofit group called Women, Action, and the Media, the acronym is WHAM, announced yesterday a partnership with Twitter to tackle harassment against women on the social network. The group put up a new online forum that's pretty much similar to the one Twitter already offers, but it's more narrowly focused on trolling, threats, and bullying of women. The forum asks whether the harassment extends beyond Twitter to other sites online, and WHAM promises to track Twitter's responses to different kinds of harassment and do some other things as well. Caitlin White is the weekend editor for MTV.com and joins us now. Welcome to you, Caitlin.
Hi. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being on. Now, Caitlin, what happens when someone fills out the WHAM form? What does WHAM do with that information?
So basically what WHAM does is they verify the claim. They look into it and they see if the abuse is actually happening or what kind of abuse is happening, and then they make sure that that happens within a 24-hour window, which I think was one of the main complaints about Twitter's old system, is that it didn't seem like any of these complaints were being addressed in a timely manner. And when it's a violent or dangerous threat, that's something that's a major concern, is the timeliness. So basically what WHAM is doing is making sure that Twitter gets those verified, like especially dangerous claims and claims of harassment within one day.
Now, can people report harassment of anybody, or does it need to be a harassing message that comes to themselves? Like if they see someone else harassing someone, can they use the form to report that harassment, or does it need to be directed at them?
You can use it to report your own personal harassment or on behalf of someone else, which is something that Twitter already had. But again, it's the timeliness issue, I think, is the main thing. And also the fact that, I don't know, I think it's really important that it's focusing specifically on women, because women disproportionately receive harassment and threats online, especially women who are journalists or writers or reporters and are covering, any issue that's a little bit controversial or that has a lot of detractors. This is a really common thing, and I think a lot of people don't take it seriously because it's online. So they're like, well, it's just online. It's not like a real threat, but it very easily can, and doxing just proves that. When people are leaking personal information about, like where you live or what your phone number is or things like this, then the threats really do become real.
It's not just because of gender, but one of the things that's horrible about the kind of trolling and harassment that happens nowadays is that, and a lot of people, one of the reasons people don't take it seriously is a lot of people just use Twitter and other social networks for casual communication with friends. It's a small scale thing. The real problem to me is that when people want to have a larger voice, they want to be influential, they want to write books and then promote those books. They want to have conversations in public and be almost a public figure, a public intellectual, even in a small scale, even in some narrow topic. And harassment and trolling tends to silence people and make them decide that it's not worth it. And that's a horrible, horrible thing. Now, the form asks for harassment, this WHAM form asks for information about harassment on sites beyond Twitter, websites, other social networks and stuff. Are they planning to take action on harassment on those other sites as well, or is that just for research purposes, do you think?
I'm not totally sure what their plans are. This is kind of their pilot rollout that they're using to experiment and see what kind of impact they can have. But they did previously partner with Facebook to try and get the site to block content that was specifically related toward gendered violence and rape, and they had a really successful campaign partnering with Facebook in the past. So I think that they do have bigger aims than just Twitter. I think that they're trying to make, the entire internet feel like a safer place for women, and especially for women who are in the media. And kind of like you were saying, I don't just use Twitter to talk to my friends or just to post inane things. This is basically an extension of my professional life. So it comes down to safety in the workplace almost for women who are in media. And I think that's what their organization is geared toward.
So, a lot of this sounds really great, but is this actually going to have any effect? Because, I know that I have friends who've been harassed. I've certainly been harassed on Twitter, and we've all. And if you're a woman and you're online and you're in media, especially, you deal with it at some point or another. But the form, Twitter's form historically has been sort of a pain to fill out. This form, although it looks a little bit better, still seems like there's the onus on the person being harassed to really fill this out. Do you think this is actually going to have any effect? Because that, or is this just kind of raising false hope? If we've got to go through this investigative process, it's not very difficult for someone to create another Twitter account to then show up and start harassing someone again. That's sort of the problem with this, right? Twitter sort of becomes part of the problem in this, and that it's much easier to create an account than it is to create another Facebook account or some other social services. So do you think that this actually has a chance at actually and limiting the amount of harassment that women are getting on Twitter?
That's a good question. I think that there has to be a foundational shift in our society eventually for this kind of harassment to stop happening, whether it's online or in real life, or just the way that women are treated as human beings instead of, as something else. But I think it does have a good chance because of the 24-hour window. And like you said, you can obviously just create a brand new account, but people that engage in this kind of behavior kind of tend to have their own identity online, and that's part of how they form their identity. So if that identity is getting shut down, then maybe that will help discourage some of it. But yeah, it is frustrating because I think part of the reason why this feels important is that it's raising awareness. Like, a lot of people don't even know that this exists. Like, a lot of people, like, if you follow prominent female writers who are writing about sex or writing about racism or writing about these, you know, fraught issues, and they just retweet one example of the kind of hate that fills their timelines all day. It's like, it's not just hateful things, it's dangerous, violent, and evil things. And I think even just raising awareness, like, hey, this is happening, is part of what will help change this.
My own view, and I'll warn you that I'm a rabid Google Plus fanboy, but my own view, Google Plus has essentially solved this problem. And the way they've solved it is that when you post a message, the comments to that message are subordinate to the message, and the person who posted the comments can delete any comment and can then block the person. And the net result is that it's trivially easy to silence harassers, and it's kind of a pain in the neck to create a new account. And the net result, in my own case, I have 3.7 million followers on Google Plus and 0 trolls. I see them once, and I never see them again. It's structural to Google Plus. Just in the same sense, harassment is structural to Twitter. Now, you quoted Wham executive director Jason Friedman praising Twitter for their cooperation in the project, but isn't Twitter the problem?
I do think that Twitter was part of the problem, because these concerns have been raised for a long time and they haven't done anything. So I think Wham stepping in and kind of supplementing their system was an important thing, and I think that's why she's praising them, is because they're letting her organization help. But I also think that praise is a little unwarranted, because, yeah, you're right, like, Twitter is structured like this. Twitter is part of the problem, and they weren't doing really anything, despite, I'm sure, numerous complaints, hordes of complaints. So, I mean, again, what you're saying about Google Plus, like, I think that is a great structural thing, but part of the reason why Twitter functions the way that it does is because everyone is allowed to speak freely, you know? And, like, that's the fundamental issue here that crops up in almost everything we do. It's freedom of speech, and then when does someone else's freedom of speech become, you know, not okay? And that's something that we've struggled with for decades and centuries, you know. Yeah,
absolutely. Well, Caitlin White is at mtv.com, and you can follow her on Twitter at Harmonica IT. Thank you so much for joining us, Caitlin White.
Thanks.
All right. Well, in just a sec, we're going to follow up on Mark Zuckerberg's big Q&A yesterday, but first I want to tell you about Gazelle. Gazelle wants to buy your used gadgets, and whether you know it or not, you want to sell your used gadgets to Gazelle because they'll give you really, really good money for it. Here's how you do it. Just go to Gazelle's website. That's GAZELLE.com. You find the device that you have in a drawer, in a box, or in the garage, gathering dust and losing value, and then you indicate its condition. If it's in great condition, they'll give you more money. If it's in horrible condition, they'll probably give you really good money considering its condition. And then you get paid fast by check, PayPal, or you get an extra 5% if you choose the Amazon gift card option. And again, you get paid fast. There are no hassles, and it's risk-free. If you have some personal data on there somewhere, you're not really sure if you've got some phone number or email address or something on there, they will wipe it for free. It will be completely erased by Gazelle. They know how to do that in a way that nobody could ever get your personal data. And Gazelle has paid nearly $170 million to over 1 million customers. So find out what your iPhone's worth. Take a minute and go to Gazelle.com to find out. You will be glad you did. And again, you're not going to believe how easy this is to do. So there's no reason not to use Gazelle. Well, Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg held court during a live stream Q&A yesterday. He answered vetted questions submitted by the public. He even answered a question about why Facebook forces users to install a separate messenger app to use Facebook's messaging feature on mobile devices. Well, he sort of answered it. Zuck basically said that messaging is very popular and one of the few things people do more than social networking. And he suggested that people use them because there's less friction to use them. So Facebook forces you to use a separate app on mobile devices in order to reduce friction. Garett Sloane writes for Adweek and joins us now to talk about the big Q&A. Welcome, Garett.
Hi, Mike. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being on. Now, would you consider this unusual event a success for Facebook?
I don't know how many people actually saw the event, but it's getting tons of media today. So I guess residually it seems to be getting positive reception, and I found it interesting. So overall positive.
And do you think it was useful for the public and press? I mean, there's a lot of press, but is this good? I mean, is the information a lot of spin and hype that's kind of pro Facebook and makes them look good, or is there some real meat in there that actually increases our understanding of what Facebook is all about?
Of course, it's the company spin. I mean, it is just like corporate Q&A, no more, no less than any other type of company. But at the end, I mean, I was able to take some interesting. He spoke candidly about a few topics. His no huge surprises, but just the general tone of it. You kind of got a sense of, you know, what he thought about the company a little better, and the Messenger app, why they spun it off, and a couple of things he resurfaced that I actually found interesting. If you wanted to go into some of them.
Sure, go ahead.
One of them, the Messenger app, he did say we kind of bungled that communicating, why we have to turn that into its own separate app, but we know now why Facebook did it. They sort of want to unbundle all their features and put them into, you know, siloed categories that they're just, like you said, frictionless. You're going to one thing to do one thing and the other for the other thing. So this is Facebook's mantra and what they're doing going forward. So I discussed that, and the cool issue came up again, which I love to follow, and it actually, you know, more than just saying are teens leaving Facebook or can Facebook remain relevant, all these topics, he just had a good response, I thought, which was, you know, no one says that about electricity. Is electricity cool? No, it just works. You expect it to work, and that sort of intuitively makes sense.
But electricity is useful too. So anyway, just saying. Now, how did Zuck like the Social Network, the movie, The Social Network, where he was depicted as kind of a douchebag?
Right, that too. The movie's long gone. So he said he kind of blocked it out of his mind. So if that tells you anything, it sounds like it was traumatic for him. And he didn't address the really controversial issues that the movie addresses, but he said it was hurtful that they said he only made Facebook to get girls, which of course he said he was dating his to-be wife at the time, so that couldn't have been true. And he's never drank apple teenies, which I found funny, so I had to say that over again in my story, reflecting what the Q&A was all about. So apparently the movie said he had loved the apple teenies, and he said he never heard of it. So yeah, I don't know. You get a little peek behind the scenes about the, you know, fun of working at Facebook. So there were a couple of interesting points there.
Garett, Sloane writes. I'm sorry. You have another question, Christina?
Yeah, I was just going to say, is there any dress what he wears the same ship clothes all day?
I'm sorry, Christina. Your Skype connection is a little flaky. Can you ask that again?
I was going to. Did he ask? Did you answer why he every day?
Okay, Christina's either speaking Vulcan or she has a bogus Skype connection.
I'll try calling her
Brian,
back.
why don't you call her back? And we're going to move on to the next story. And I'm sorry about that, Christina. But Skype is a stern taskmaster, I can tell you. Garett Sloane writes at adweek.com.
Email me her question, please. I'm
Okay.
dying to know what it was now.
We will do. Garett Sloane's at adweek.com, and you can follow him on Twitter at Garett Sloane. Garett is spelled with one R and two T's, and Sloane has an E at the end, so check it out. Thanks for joining us, Garett Sloane.
Thanks for having me. Bye.
Walmart has developed a Chromecast competitor called the Voodoo Spark, Voodoo spelled V-U-D-U. The product's existence was discovered in an FCC filing. The HDMI streaming stick connects to home Wi-Fi, at which point the user is invited to use Walmart's Voodoo app to control what plays on the TV. Walmart filed for a trademark for Voodoo Spark last month. Brad Linder writes and edits at Lilliputing and joins us now. Hey, Brad.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm doing great, thank you. Now, details in the FCC filing are scarce, but what do we know about the Voodoo Spark, and how does it compare with Chromecast?
Well, it's hard to say exactly how it's going to compare with the Chromecast, but what we know is it's about the same size, the same shape, and seems to have a similar functionality in that it's just a little stick with an HDMI port on one end. It almost looks like a big chunky USB port or USB flash drive. You just plug it into your TV, and it's going to let you connect to the internet and stream video. From the FCC listing, that's about all we know about it, and the fact that it lets you connect to Vudu, which is Walmart's online video service, lets you rent or purchase movies, and looks a lot like a Chromecast, and the Chromecast, of course, is an inexpensive device that Google offers. The difference is that we know Chromecast can be used with your phone or your tablet to stream content from HBO, from Netflix, from YouTube, from Google Play. And it looks like it's possible that the Voodoo Spark might only work with Voodoo, although that might just be that we don't have enough information. Maybe it's going to be their answer to all of these other devices. Amazon Fire TV Stick also does something similar. The Roku TV Stick does something similar. It's possible Voodoo and Walmart are just going to have their own service that lets you tap into other third-party apps as well. But all we know for certain is that it'll work with Voodoo.
So, you mentioned the Roku's TV Stick, which is a device I love, and actually it has a great Voodoo app on it, and I love Voodoo actually as a service. They to me consistently have the highest quality streaming of any of the movie offerings out there. Since Voodoo is already on the Roku streaming stick, and it's relatively easy to get on some of these other services too, what do you think is really in this for Walmart? Since they already have this service available on a number of other devices, what do you think is really in it for them to try to enter this space? I mean, especially since the Roku stick, which is the same size as the Chromecast, will let you stream or buy your Voodoo content already.
Well, I would have thought the same thing when Amazon decided that they were going to announce, or that they were going to release their own TV stick. So the Amazon Fire TV Stick also lets you stream content from multiple sources, sells for $39, makes it a little bit cheaper than Roku's offering. So Amazon has something, Roku has something, Google has something, and there's no reason that Voodoo couldn't be on all of those services. In fact, it might be. I can't recall if it is, but there are a lot of services that are almost identical right now, and I don't know that there is a good reason other than branding. You want to be on every device that you possibly can be on, and so why not release your own stick? My guess is that nobody's going to be that interested. I don't know that there's hardcore loyal Voodoo fans that will buy a Voodoo stick that only does Voodoo. My guess is that it'll appeal to people if Walmart does one of a couple things. One, they might make it like Amazon's offering or Roku's offering and open it up so that you can use lots of services with it through your Voodoo account. Or it's possible that sorry, I've got a phone call going on another line there. Or it's possible that they could offer it as a freebie or something that's so incredibly inexpensive that it becomes attractive. If you're a Voodoo customer and you're a loyal customer, why not get a free Voodoo stick so that you can watch more Voodoo on your TV?
Probably Walmart's lawyers calling to shut you down there. So what is this Inktel Corporation? They're apparently the manufacturer. Do we know anything about them?
I haven't done a lot of research, but in a lot of cases like this, what you see is some Chinese or Taiwanese manufacturer produces the hardware, and then they get somebody else's name on it. And so that's the fun with FCC. A lot of items that are not actually announced, like this one, show up at the FCC, and there's a cottage industry, I think, of people hunting the FCC for listings. I have a buddy who prides himself on being able to find Amazon Kindles before Amazon announces them this way. It's interesting that over the last year or so, we've seen so many devices like this, because at Little Computing, we cover little computers, little compute. I can't speak right now. Little computing, and a couple of years ago, we started to see these little devices that have sort of the guts of a cheap Android smartphone that you plug them into your TV, and you can run Android apps on your TV. They're a little clunky. They're not that easy to use. Something like the Nexus Player that Google just released is simpler, but possibly less powerful in some ways. And I think it's interesting that a couple of years ago, these unpolished versions running stock Android software came out and allowed you to stream content, anything that you could stream to your phone, to your TV, with an interface that wasn't really that TV friendly. And so then Google basically said, hey, look, there's this stuff out there. It's already available. It's inexpensive. It has the right hardware. Why don't we put good software on it? And so we saw the Chromecast come out. Roku must have had similar thoughts, and Amazon had similar thoughts, and now Voodoo is as well. So I think there's a lot of companies overseas that are making inexpensive devices that have enough hardware to crank out high-quality internet video to your TV, and I guess Intel's one of them.
I'm kind of interested in this in part because, of course, the Chromecast is spectacularly cheap. The Voodoo Spark does a lot less, and it's being sold by Walmart. So I can't imagine how cheap this is going to be. $10, $15, $20, something like that. It's got to be super, super cheap. Well, in any event, Brad Linder is at bradlinder.net, and you can follow him on Twitter at Brad Linder. Thanks for joining us, Brad.
Thanks for having me.
All right. BMW has created streetlights equipped with sockets for charging electric cars. The company announced today a pilot project to test the idea in Munich, Germany. In addition to great beer, Munich also gets some awesome street lamps. The company has actually produced 2 prototypes, which it calls Light and Charge, and the lights themselves are lower energy LEDs, and the chargers are Charge Now compatible, which is BMW's own standard. The chargers would use an app for paying for the charging. Christina Warren, does this sound like a good idea to you? I mean, street lights tend to be in places where, you know, unless there's parking or something like that, it's probably not a good idea. If there is parking, then maybe it is a good idea. But I just don't know how long people are going to be in those locations where they have streetlights, unless it's like a residential area. But how does this idea strike you?
I mean, I think it's a really smart idea, the fact that they're at least trying it out, you know, making it work with their stuff. I mean, like you said, that the hard thing, I'm not really familiar with Munich, but I know in New York and in a lot of other cities, you know, San Francisco, where there are streetlights, there's not necessarily great parking. But what's interesting about the idea is if you could make these sort of ubiquitous, kind of make them these charging stations, maybe it's not a thing that you do for long-term, you know, charging, but maybe like you look down and you're like, you know what, I really need another 30 minutes or I need another hour or whatever. And you plug in for 5 minutes, you know, or 2 minutes or 3 minutes. And that might be an interesting way of kind of adding ubiquitous charging anywhere. And so you could, you know, get to a charging station where you need to do your big charge later or go home. But if you just need a little bit more, you know, kind of like topping up your gas tank, I think that's sort of interesting.
They should also put gas tanks in every street lamp. Just kidding. Not a good idea. The other company that's really aggressive about getting chargers everywhere, of course, is Tesla. And BMW and Tesla met recently to discuss putting chargers everywhere. So that is an interesting partnership, and I hope, you know, hopefully they'll come up with a ubiquitous solution that's everywhere, that supports all the electric cars and doesn't muscle out their rivals or whatever. So we'll be keeping an eye on that.
No, I was going to say, I mean, like the only thing with this is like, it's great that it works with Charge Now, but like, can you even imagine if you have to start looking for, it's one thing with gas, you know, making sure, do they have unleaded or premium or whatever, but if you have to start looking for what brand of charger is around, so like you have to look at the street light, okay, well, does it have the right logo? Can I plug in or not? I mean, that's the sort of thing that might really cut down on people adopting electric cars if you make it too complicated. So I do like that BMW and Tesla and others are at least talking.
Exactly. I can either park my car or I can drive home. Interesting choice. Well, Germany and Brazil want the United Nations to crack down on the harvesting of metadata for mass surveillance. An earlier UN resolution linked mass surveillance to the possible harming of human rights, and now they want metadata collection added to that resolution, calling metadata, quote, highly intrusive. You know, I'm not sure that the UN is going to be very effective here, Christina Warren, but I do agree that metadata should be officially considered highly intrusive. Metadata is incredibly intrusive simply because you can patch together all kinds of really detailed information about somebody's life by just the information about who they called, when they called, where they called from, that sort of thing.
No, you're absolutely right. And what's interesting to me, though, is, you know, obviously the United Nations is coming at this from a government standpoint and what government should be doing. But most of this metadata is actually being captured by public companies or private companies, I guess we should say, private organizations. So I am with you. I don't know how successful they're going to be at any of this stuff when you consider the companies such as Google are really, Facebook are collecting the majority of this stuff. But it's also being, collected to various degrees by governments as we've learned too. So I wonder kind of about that kind of rationale about, saying that this is, highly important and that it can definitely be, highly intrusive, but how you separate that from what a country is able to do versus what a private company is able to do.
Exactly. Private companies, I think, according to the UN, are allowed to violate people's human rights, but governments may or may not be, depending on how big their militaries are. Essentially, that's how the UN works. Well, we reported earlier this year on a big Home Depot hack, among others, and we didn't know at the time, and what Home Depot admitted yesterday is that in addition to the copying of some 56 million payment cards, hackers also grabbed about 53 million email addresses. So the next time a retailer asks you why you're refusing to give your email address, Home Depot. That's why. Well, in other news, we shared laughter and tears over the comical, then tragic fate of Google's notorious mystery barges. The massive showrooms constructed out of unfashionable shipping containers arose on the waters of San Francisco Bay and Portland, Maine, and then were unceremoniously shut down and then dismantled for scrap. And now we know why. According to documents obtained under the Freedom of Information Act, the barges were deemed a fire hazard. The Coast Guard found that the combination of over 5,000 gallons of fuel on the main deck plus a substantial amount of combustible material meant that the barges were just ready to be set off at any time. They don't look that flammable, Christina Warren. They look kind of fire resistant, but what do I know? I'm not with the Coast Guard.
No, exactly. I mean, you never know what's in there. What always was fascinating to me about these barges is that I'm not joking about this. Charles Ponzi, famous, for the Ponzi scheme.
Yes.
His idea of how he was going to get out from under the, stealing from Peter to pay Paul scheme, how he was going to go legit. And I'm not joking about this. You guys can look this up. His idea was to prove his solvency, which he wasn't, and then put a down payment on these old World War I vessels, and then basically had these shipping barges that would go from port to port selling stuff. His plan to like undo all of his schemes was to create what we now know as the Google barge, which to me is absolutely fascinating. That Google came up with the exact same idea that Charles Ponzi came up with, that was going to be what would get him out of having to go to jail. Obviously worked out for neither party. So
he's not a Google fellow now, is he? By any chance?
No, I don't think so. But if anybody ever wants to read about Charles Ponzi's scheme by Mitchell Zukoff is probably one of the best books I've read in the last 5 or 6 years. Fascinating.
Awesome. I'm going to read it this weekend. All right. Well, our TNT fan of the day is Farrell Greenlee in Cortez, Colorado, who posted this picture on Twitter and said, this is how he watches not only Tech News Today, but also Padres This Week in Enterprise Tech, also known as Twyat. And wow, you've already got the live video on that. Look at that. Wow, that's incredible. Okay, now the live one's better. this looks very like sort of moody and sort of, kind of atmospheric. Very nice. Very, very nice. How do you watch or listen to TNT? Just record a video or take a picture of your setup and post it on Google+, Twitter, or Facebook. Just use the hashtag #HowIWatchTNT and we will find it. That is the Tech News Today. Christina Warren, thank you so much for joining us this Friday, as usual. I really love it when you're on the show. What have you been working on these days?
So I'm working on kind of a big head-to-head between Android Lollipop and iOS 8.1. I'm not really comparing the features, but more the experience. So that's something that should go up this weekend, basically talking about how iOS and Android are both closer together and further apart before, with what the actual usage experience with those two operating systems are, and kind of looking at the state of mobile OSs as a whole. That
sounds fantastic. I can't wait to read that, because I'm hearing a lot of chatter about Lollipop and people saying, wow, this is really great. So, it is. So yeah, I've been working on that all week, and it should be up this weekend. Can't wait to read it. Christina Warren, film_girl on Twitter. Thank you so much for joining us again. Thank you. All right. Well, you can subscribe, and you should subscribe. You must subscribe to Tech News Today on Stitcher, iTunes, YouTube, Feely, Yahoo, RSS. You can choose your favorite at twit.tv/TNT. And you can follow us on Twitter at Tech News Today TV, and we want to hear your thoughts and opinions. You can send us email to tnt@twit.tv, or you can call us at 260-TNT-SHOW. And don't miss our evening newscast, Tech News Tonight, at 4 p.m. Pacific tonight and every weeknight right here on the Twit Network. My name is Mike Elgan. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you Monday.
That's why I never play the music usually. Come on. Things are gonna get weird on a Friday.
Christina Warren, thank you so much.